What do you think of when someone says rainforest? Well, the Amazon, presumably, with all its colourful creatures. But we also have forest, and we have rain here in Wales. The floor of these magical woods and ancient trunks are carpeted in mosses. Nearby is the constant sound of the water splashing and rushing. There are large boulders and deep gorges, a place of unbeatable adventure. Some of these woodlands haven't changed much over centuries. Walking here is like going on a journey in another era or another world. Here in the west, where it's wettest, there are areas of international importance on account of the plethora of mosses and liverworts that grow here, many of them unique to Wales. The steep gorges and the damp climate make this habitat perfect. These habitats are found only in a few places on the western shores of Britain, and we are lucky that West Wales is one of them. It rains across the whole of Wales for sure, but here in the west, it's wettest. Due to the regular rainfall, the constant moisture, the mild temperatures and the clean air, these types of plants thrive and so create habitat for other types of wildlife. Temperate rainforest is what we call this type of habitat. It will rain here on at least 200 days of the year. It will be relatively mild in winter and not too hot in summer. Under these conditions, these special species thrive, and so the rainforest supports a variety of wildlife. The rocky gorges are the ideal habitats for these plants. The water level and the humidity is just right. The broad canopy stops the humidity from escaping, and the organisms thrive on the trees and dead bark. Each one has its particular home. Some grow on the edge of the water, some on the branches, some are underwater for some of the time. And as the water rushes over the rocks, the trees on the banks are also showered with water, with a whole variety of different mosses, liverworts and lichens growing on them in the misty haze. These organisms hold their moisture, each playing their role to reduce the impact of floods. Plants growing on plants, and Celtic patterns everywhere. Ferns poking their heads up through the moss. Leaves of many shapes, but of one colour? Take a look at how many types of moss are at your feet. Some are like feathers, some like stars, some like little tongues, and each one a different shade of green. There are some very strange looking things growing on the trees. Some like cabbage, some with spots, some hairy. They're grey, brown, green, black and white. They are different types of lichen. They are special as they are two organisms as one, fungi and algae. In the autumn we see the fruiting bodies of fungi. They remind us that the network of hyphae that hide underground and beneath the bark are there all year round. The rain falls through the canopy roof, there are streams at your feet, and everything else in between is soaked through. If you can pause and look long enough, you will find a whole world of wildlife here. The vegetation supports a whole host of creatures. For instance, there's the oak, which is home to a wide range of beetles and rare insects, and about 200 types of moth. The insects live on the plants, and in turn they are food for the birds. Here's the dipper feeding on insects. It's a good place to look out for dragonflies and damselflies. Here is the wren that likes the dense vegetation, and the woodpecker that likes big, old trees. This complex ecosystem is still gradually secretly developing since the end of the Ice Age, 20,000 years ago. There are now only remnants of the Celtic rainforest here and there, on steep slopes and in narrow gorges where the sheep can't graze. Once upon a time, these woodlands were much more extensive. By today, they are a rare habitat. With support from the European Union and the Welsh Government, many partners are working together to conserve the Welsh Celtic rainforest for the generations to come. For centuries, people felled the trees for timber and to create grazing. In the 20th century, they planted faster-growing, non-native trees. We are removing some of these planted trees to provide light, to enable the native trees to regenerate, and to once more create habitat for the special wildlife. There are other non-native species that are causing problems too. The worst one is Rhododendron ponticum. This is a foreign species, but it became fashionable to plant it in the gardens of stately homes in the Victorian era. But it took over. As this shrub creates dense shade, no other plant grows below it. The flowers, ferns and mosses all disappear. The creatures that live on the leaves and the grasses also disappear, and the animals that would feed on them suffer too. We have to use contractors to cut down and kill the Rhododendron ponticum in order to ensure that it doesn't regrow next year. It is vital that we get rid of all of the Rhododendron ponticum so seeds cannot be spread again in the future. We will need to graze some of the woodlands in order to manage the thick undergrowth of brambles, bracken, ivy and young trees. By doing this, we will give an opportunity to the wildflowers of the forest to reclaim the forest floor. It will also help the lichens and the birds, like the redstart, that need an open woodland structure to thrive. You can join us on our journey to conserve the Welsh Celtic rainforest, with the hope that we, and all the other species, will continue to enjoy this special habitat into the future.